Okay, another day of big news stories that I want to go through and help my audience understand what's going on. To do that, I have Kingsley Wilson with me. Kingsley, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me, Stephen. It's great to be with you.
Let me give some background just so my audience knows who you are. You are in charge of the digital media and strategic communication for the Center for Renewing America. You guys are a think tank that helps members of Congress, conservative members of Congress, get their thinking straight on bills, writing bills, crafting bills, and then moving forward with the conservative movement. I wanted to jump in on a story with you and get your perspective. You know, we're hearing more and more about illegal immigrants being secretly signed up to vote in this upcoming election. For me, it's the first time that I've ever worried that illegals may actually have a greater influence on the destiny of America than me, a natural born American citizen. I'm reading that as people come up through the Darion Gap, they're being told, be grateful for Joe Biden. He's the one letting you into America, and make sure to vote Democrat when you get in. Now Biden is pushing for this mass amnesty of illegals. What are your thoughts on this story? What are your thoughts on what Democrats are trying to push forward onto America?
Yeah, it's an absolute disgrace. And I think you and every American is correct to be concerned about it. You know, we hear from the left all the time that the Great Replacement is a conspiracy theory that right wingers are trying to push onto the populace. But that couldn't be further from the truth, because what we are witnessing today is that the Great Replacement is reality. As you say, people are being incentivized to come here. They are breaking our laws every single day. They are here. They're giving free phones, free healthcare, free housing to a lot of these people. And that's really, I think, hurting the American citizen who is working hard to make ends meet, who's struggling under Biden inflation, gas prices through the roof, grocery prices through the roof. We are really putting illegals before American citizens, and that's a disgrace. And allowing these individuals who don't respect, our foundational beliefs or our constitutional founding to vote in our elections dilutes democracy. We also hear the left so often say, that the Republican right is a danger to democracy, that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy. Nothing could be more of a threat to democracy than allowing foreigners who do not pay taxes, who are not here legally, to vote in our elections and to have a say in our system. You cannot benefit from, the American system, from democracy, if everyone isn't a part of it, if they're not all contributing in some way. And a lot of these illegals that are coming here, as I've said, they're living off the government dole, and they're not actually working. They're not contributing to the economy. And a lot of them are actually sending what money they do earn back home as remittances. So they're not only, not helping the economy in any way, they're helping foreign countries' economies. And that is more America last than I think anybody could ever imagine. So it is crucial, looking forward to November, that we, conduct thorough investigations, and we want to have confidence in our elections. We want to know that our votes are being counted safely and securely. And making sure that each person that votes on November 5th is a citizen is the best way to do that. I know Representative Chip Roy has put forward his SAVE Act, it's called, that will ensure, that non-citizens are not allowed to vote on Election Day. And I think that every Republican should support that measure. I think that every state should also take up a similar measure. My organization, the Center for Renewing America, has recently published a, model state legislation that different states can adopt that really mirrors what Chip Roy is trying to do here in DC. So that kind of legislation, I think, is going to be crucial as we approach November, because listen, in 2020, it was the mail-in ballots, right? It was COVID. This time around, it is going to be illegal immigrants who have come into this country under the Biden administration, 10 to 15 million of them, who are going to be swaying this election. And you mentioned in your opening there, Joe Biden's amnesty order. And what that really was, in my view, an attempt to buy these people's votes, right? He knows that a lot of these people are going to be voting in the election come November. So he wants to give them all the goodies he can. He wants them to be able to stay here for as long as they can, and to just really use the American public in a sense. And that has to stop. Securing our border when President Trump wins in November needs to be the #1 priority, because again, we have people who are here who just don't even, speak English. They don't understand what George Washington envisioned for this country, what Hamilton and Jefferson envisioned for this country. And that needs to be brought to the forefront. We need to renew a consensus of America as a nation founded in the way that our founders intended it to be. And illegal immigrants who come here and break our laws just have no conception of that.
Yeah. Wow. I agree with everything that you just said. Going back to this great replacement theory, they first started trying to demonize this as a theory, saying, oh, it's white man Tucker Carlson pushing this on Fox News that we want to, replace the white people of America. But then as I've become friends with Black Americans in Chicago, they are saying the same thing. They're saying, wait a minute, Black Americans are being replaced. We're struggling to find jobs because they'd rather give it to an illegal immigrant that doesn't speak English than give it to one of us. They're pouring billions of dollars into housing, feeding, and supporting illegals, but not to the Black community, right? And so that was the first time I was like, okay, wait a minute. This actually is a black and white issue. This actually is a foreign election interference issue, right? Like maybe it's not China hacking thermostats through Wi-Fi, but maybe it's getting 150,000 Chinese people into a certain place, or a bunch of people from Ecuador, or emptying the prisons of Venezuela in order to get them into New York, or, oh, heaven forbid, New Jersey looks like it could be going red. We better flood it with illegals that tend to vote socialist, and whoever can give them the most free stuff. So it is very, very concerning to see the direction that the country is going in. One thing that I've noticed that the Center for Renewing America has been talking about that I honestly know nothing about. So if it's lame, I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. If it's not, I do want to understand it. But you guys have been writing about the Impound Control Act and how it's possibly not constitutional, and that even Donald Trump has mixed feeling. What is this? I don't understand what it is.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I think a lot of, people in the political movement haven't really understood it for a long time because it's not something that's really talked about. And President Trump has kind of made it a topic of discussion on the campaign trail. He's talked about how, he wants to impound funds, and how the Impoundment Control Act of, 1974, I think it was, may have been unconstitutional. So basically, when Congress appropriates money, when they give, different agencies their budgets for the year, maybe they give DHS $3 billion or whatever it is, any money that is not used by that agency has to be spent under our current laws, under the Impoundment Control Act. What Donald Trump wants to do is say, hey, I'm going to cut the federal bureaucracy. I'm going to get rid of a lot of these, faceless government bureaucrats that have these jobs that are just, superfluous. We're going to get rid of a ton of our, woke and weaponized programs. There are so many different offices and agencies, and just we can cut the bloat in a lot of ways. And I think, you mentioned before we started the show that you were a little bit libertarian leaning, and I am in the sense too of government spending. Absolutely. I think that we spend way too much annually on government programs that don't work well. They don't serve the American people, and all they do is enrich the corrupt cabal of DC elites that are here in Washington, DC, that hate Americans in the heartland, who have traditional values and who don't want to be a part of, their elitist system, their globalist system. So I think it's definitely time to cut the bloat, to stop the wasteful spending. And the Impoundment Control Act does that by saying, hey, I've cut a lot of these programs. Congress impounded X number of funds. We have this much left over. I'm going to take it back. That's basically all it is. It's just, taking those funds back, telling the agency, no, you can't just spend everything you've been allotted. If you come short, that's great. We're going to save that money, give it back to the American people. So that's basically all it is. It makes a lot of sense. It's how most other businesses are run. But of course, we know that the US government is not really a well-oiled machine. But President Trump wants to use this tool basically to bring the federal government wasteful spending to heel. And it is something that Nixon really fought for and ultimately lost that battle. But it's something that I think is going to be really important in reinvigorating the draining of the swamp. A lot of people, when they look at President Trump's, first 4 terms in office, they say, well, he didn't really drain the swamp. I think there's a lot more that he could have done. What a lot of people, I think, outside the Beltway don't see, that I see every day because I sadly live here in the swamp, is that the rot is just so deep. It is so entrenched. It's so difficult to root out. It's going to take more than 4 years. And that's why I think the America First movement is so powerful. And that's why they're so afraid of it, because President Trump will come back and finish the job, but it won't just stop with him. We are going to continue a decades-long peel back of what has been done to our federal government spending. And they hate that. They're fearful of that. They want to put an end to that. And that's why they're so scared of President Trump winning in November. And I think that's why, as Republicans, we have to have things like the Impound Control Act at the top of our minds. We need to be ready to fight those court battles. And have the legal support to do it. Because listen, when Trump gets in November, there are going to be a lot of court battles that I think we're going to be having. We're going to try, to deport people. Mass deportations is a promise that President Trump has made on the campaign trail. I'm sure we'll see, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals come in and say that that's unconstitutional, or, give us an injunction. And we're going to have to be ready to have those fights, because at the end of the day, the president needs to be able to do the job that he was elected to do by the American people. And I think the American people are behind President Trump. They're done with the wasteful spending. They're done with the illegals taking their jobs and replacing them. You made a great point about how Black and Hispanic Americans are also being replaced by these illegal immigrants. I also talked to a lot of, foundational Black Americans who have been here since the beginning of this country, and they are being replaced by foreigners who, don't share their home, don't share their values. And that is just as disgraceful as what someone like Tucker Carlson talks about on Fox News. It's not just a replacement of, a certain demographic. It's a replacement of an entire citizenry, regardless of color. And that cannot stand.
Yeah. Okay. Now I understand why the Impound Control Act is being talked about, because a lot of that rot, a lot of that swamp comes from what appears to be unlimited amounts of money, even though it's our hard-earned tax money. I say stolen a lot, but that, that's the libertarian side of me, is where I don't believe it's patriotic to overpay on your taxes. I don't.
Right.
The reason that we are taxed to death is because they're so terrible with money. But as you were describing, I couldn't help but think about an episode of The Office where Oscar is trying to explain to Michael Scott, hey, we actually need to spend all of the money or else they'll shrink our budget. And he's like, okay, now explain it to me like a 5th grader. And then the episode goes on. Do we want new chairs? Do we want new copy machine? Anyway, they spend it stupidly because they're terrified that they won't get more money next year. And I think a lot of these government programs, they're like, no, wait a minute. Our job is to expand. Our job is to spend all of this, but then you end up spending $1,000 on a hammer. You could buy it for $13 at Home Depot, or a bag of bolts for $1,500 that normally costs 90 cents. Like this is where that government bloat, like it's weapons of math destruction, where they literally are burying us in debt. And now they're going to let, socialist minded people from other countries come in and take over. The American people have to fight back. I believe Donald Trump is our greatest shot at that.
Absolutely.
Another thing that I see you talk about, Kingsley, is the U.S. military. Has the focus of the U.S. military shifted so much to the woke agenda that they actually risk being an ineffective body? Let me explain. So when I was growing up, going into the military was like a sign of excellence, becoming your best, protecting your country. giving it your all, gaining real world experience that would give you skills to propel you within corporate America. Now it feels like it's more about protecting people's feelings than the border. Uh, you know, honoring the gender somebody wishes they were versus the gender they actually are. American taxpayer funded sex changes are happening in the military. Are we becoming weak? And this is why people don't want to join the armed services. What are your thoughts on all of that?
We're absolutely becoming weak. And I think, it's no surprise that recruitment levels for the US military are at all time lows. It's because Joe Biden has put wokeness to the forefront of the US military's mission, where the mission used to be, as you mentioned, excellence. And that's a shame. And I think that the American people see that, young people particularly. As a young person myself, I have seen the US military kind of become just indoctrinated with this LGBTQ mafia that has overtaken a lot of our cultural discourse and a lot of our agencies in Joe Biden's federal government. They have, put the needs of the non-binary military service members, whatever that means, ahead of the mission. And that has to stop. People have to be held accountable for that. And that goes back to, government bloat. There are so many positions now within the Department of Defense that are just frankly, diversity hires, affirmative action hires, or they're just people that are servicing, the DEI office or the gender studies office. And that kind of stuff just needs to be cut out. There is no reason that an American citizen, a taxpayer who is struggling to make ends meet, should have to fund, transgender surgeries or abortions for members of the military. That is absolutely disgraceful, and it takes away from the safety of everyday Americans. We need to get back to the basics. The military is primarily to keep the United States safe from threats. And that needs to be what the military is engaged in doing. We don't need, another diversity office. We have, frankly, enough of those in Joe Biden's government agencies and in HR departments across the country, in corporations. That kind of stuff just is anti-American. It's antithetical to, a free and fair society, and one that views people through merit. We used to have a meritocracy in this country, and especially in the military. But now we've seen the military start to lower standards for different people to be more inclusive. And nothing hurts the American people more than that. And I think, too, the America First movement is really kind of honing in as well, not just on the wokeness in the U.S. military, but also how, our military and defense industrial complex has really failed in recent years, right? We were in the Middle East for 20 years, and we left it worse off than we found it. We have been really a destabilizing force in many regions of the world, and we've spent endless money. We've spent, American lives to do this kind of stuff, and we've tried to push Jeffersonian democracies on countries that frankly don't want it and where it will never work. It's been absolutely ridiculous, and it's made, I think the American military weaker. And I think young people, again, like myself, we see that. We're not signing up to go die in some desert war in the Middle East for, a country that hates us and doesn't want us there, doesn't want democracy, and is perfectly fine, doing their own thing. So I think young people have especially woken up to that. And that's why you see the America First movement starting to resonate so much with Gen Z men in particular, right? These boys are no longer willing to, gung-ho, go fight for the military, go die for Ukraine's borders. They see what's happening at our own southern border. They want to put American interests first. We can't be the world's police force, and we can't be their piggy bank either. So I think, this nation building around the world with our woke military agenda has to end, because what a lot of the programs that we're also instituting in these countries when we try to push our democracy is gender theory, right? This radical, crazed stuff. We're trying to tell different countries around the world, oh, you need, LGBTQ protections. I mean, we're funding things like LGBTQ night, trivia nights in Latvia, poetry nights, things like that. We're funding pride parades in Prague. I mean, all over the world, the US State Department is kind of just exporting gender confusion. And that kind of stuff doesn't serve the interests of the American people. And it frankly doesn't serve the interests of, people who live in Prague or Latvia either. We just need to stick to our own issues and put our own interests at the forefront. And I think through a realist foreign policy, we can really start to do something like that and kind of peel back all the layers. Because when we just, as we were talking about this bloated spending, when we give the DoD this massive budget, when we give, different defense groups, massive budgets. All it does is enrich the defense contractors in Washington, D.C. It just helps Raytheon and Lockheed Martin's bottom lines, and it hurts the American people. So we need to make sure that when President Trump comes back in November, that we are finally once and for all putting the America First foreign policy agenda to the forefront of everything we do.
Yeah. One thing that I appreciate about Trump, and I see him for what he is. He's a flawed person who's doing his best. He loves his country, but he is against war. He is against death. I would love to see this humanitarian crisis in Ukraine end. They've had an opportunity to end this war multiple times, and they won't. Biden keeps dangling a carrot that there's endless amounts of weapons and money. Meanwhile, our military is like, hey, we're running out of weapons to defend ourselves. And like you can send pallets of money to Ukraine like Obama did to Iran, but you can't eat money, right? Like there has to be resources and things. And so, same thing with everything going on with Israel and all that. I would love to see somebody who uses diplomacy versus, brute force in order to seek peace. One thing that was discouraging and encouraging to me was when you saw these pro-Palestine, pro-Hamas marches on university campuses, you got a flavor for, wow, there's a lot of more anti-Semitism in the country than I realized. There's a lot of confusion. You have, lesbians for Palestine. Are you kidding me? They would cut your head off. Gays for Palestine. They will drop you off a building on your head. They will smash your brains in with bricks. Like it's no joke over there. They don't mess with that. It's why Disney and BMW and all these companies don't put the pride flag on their Middle East Twitter feeds, right? But at the same time, you saw these young people that were like trying to keep the American flag from touching the ground when they tried to lower it and put up the Palestine flag. You saw people blocking off and protecting buildings. And it made me think, wait a minute, if we had a military that actually cared about defending our border and people saw the damage of what was going on, I think you would see people that say, I'm going to sign up to save my country. But my 15-year-old son, you think I want to send him so that cocaine snorting Zelensky can get another summer home while my child dies? Hell no, you'll never see me do that. I'm not fighting a war that could end. And I think that's where you also see a lot of people going like, wait a minute, why as a young person am I going to go die for bitter old men that are just trying to enrich the corporations that keep them in power, yet they've been in Washington for 50 years and haven't done jack crap for the American people? I think that the younger generation is seeing this going, wait a minute, I'm not going to go die for your stupidity.
Right, absolutely. And you mentioned the different colleges there. I sadly went to a very leftist university. I went to UCLA, graduated in 2021. So it was kind of disheartening to see all of that stuff happening on UCLA's campus. I think they were one of the worst with the different protesters clashing. It got very violent. They had to send in the LAPD to try to break it up. And, as an America First conservative, I hate to see foreign ethnic conflicts play out on American soil. I think that is one of the worst things about, this mass migration that we've allowed is we've allowed people to come from all over the world and to bring their grievances with them that, have nothing to do with America First foreign policy, that, have to do with, their homeland, various disputes there, et cetera. And that, I think as an American, just it doesn't really interest me. But it was very encouraging, as you said, to see young patriots really pushing back. It was sort of, the biggest white pill, I think, in recent memory to see all of these young folks just, gearing up and saying that we respect America. We're going to protect our flag. We're going to stand for patriotic values. And we're not going to support, nations like Hamas. And, I will say, the nation of Israel, I think they absolutely have every right to defend themselves, but that's their battle, right? We give them $3 billion a year on autopilot. We've done so since the Obama administration. And they have one of the best intelligence agencies in the world. They have, one of the strongest militaries in the world. They have a budget surplus. So They can go fight that war. They've proven that they have a right to exist in that region before. They can do it again. But it is not, my burden. It's not as a young person or as your son as a young person. It's not our burden to go fight these various border skirmishes again while our own southern border is under siege. And as you point out as well, a lot of what this does is just really enrich the Defense Department, the defense lobbyists, and all of those people who profit off of war and off of death. It's really sick to see that they really just want to prolong conflict all over the world. That's their metric of success, right? And it's funny because in any other profession, if you perform poorly and you make mistake after mistake, you are usually fired. You're not promoted. But what we're seeing in the defense industry is we're seeing people who, had a botched withdrawal from Afghanistan, were wrong about WMDs. I could go on and on, right? Just have made the Middle East utter chaos. Those people still work at the Department of the Defense. They still work, at the CIA. That's ridiculous. Those career bureaucrats need to be rooted out because all they have shown is that they are ill-equipped to manage international conflicts, and they're not diplomats. As you said, we need to bring diplomacy back, and these people have proven with their track record that they're incapable of doing that. So that's why I think, President Trump's promise to fire a lot of government bureaucrats when he gets into office is going to be very important. We have to just root these people out. They've been in there for decades, and they claim to be apolitical, right? Nonpartisan, a lot of these people, but we all know that they push for the globalist neocon agenda, and that is antithetical to President Trump's vision for the country and for the America First movement's vision for the country. So going forward, I definitely want to see, American interests put first. I don't want to see foreign ethnic conflicts playing out on American soil. I don't want to hear, debates in Congress about what we should do to help this country or help that country. We need to help American citizens because the reality is they are struggling under Joe Biden's economy every single day. There is crime in our inner cities. There is a border crisis. And American citizens really need to be our first and utmost priority when we think about policy in this country.
Yeah. Okay, we're up against the clock, so I'm going to jump down a couple of questions. You are more involved than me and probably anybody that listens to my my show. Excuse me. When you guys are talking about putting policy together, lining up good ideas for Trump when he gets back in office, is there a feeling within these think tanks of positivity and being able to make an actual difference? Or is there any pessimism that, wow, in 3.5 years, Biden has done damage that we'll never fix? What is the feeling behind the scenes with groups like yourself and others that you rub shoulders with?
Listen, I think we definitely have a challenge, but it is not an insurmountable one. It is just going to take hard work and grit. And luckily, the American people, especially America First patriots, have that in spades. So we are doing a ton of work drafting, EOs and things of that nature so that when President Trump gets into office on day one, he will have things ready to go, like withdrawing from the WHO. We're going to have just a ton of stuff in the can. So he'll be able to sign it and just do it immediately, first day or in that first 100 days. And he is going to be able to peel back a lot of the damage, as you say, that Joe Biden has done to this country in just a short period of time. And we can reverse the clock. Listen, I always say it's 11:59 in this country. The hour is definitely late, but it is not over. We have an opportunity with this election to really rechart the course of this country. We are definitely heading and spiraling towards decline thanks to Joe Biden's term in office. But we can reverse that. We can stop it. We can end it. We can put the American people first again and America First policies to the forefront. And President Trump is absolutely our vehicle to do that, right? He is battle tested. He has been in this position before. He knows where the bodies are buried. He has seen the DC machine from the inside. So he, better than anybody, knows how to pick it apart. And I think that a lot of the people at my organization that served in the past Trump administration also have that experience and that wisdom of seeing, just how much combativeness President Trump faced when he tried to get things done for the American people. They know how to do it this time. They're equipped. They're ready to do it. And projects like Project 2025, which my organization is very involved with, is making sure that we also have the personnel to staff these administrations. Because last time, as I'm sure a lot of your viewers know, President Trump was unfortunately faced with a lot of sellouts, right? A lot of people who betrayed him and who ultimately did not have his vision, his America First vision, at the forefront of their policy agenda. They were trying to enrich themselves, trying to, propel the DC corrupt cartel, whatever it was. They weren't serving the American people. So this time around, we are going to make sure that we have the resumes ready to go on deck and that we have patriots who are ready to staff these different positions across our government. Because at the end of the day, the America First movement is about people outside of the Washington, D.C. Beltway. So it is going to be important to have people from all over the country working in these government agencies who are able to represent the American people from all across the nation. We can't just rely on, the DC staffers that have been here for decades, who don't really believe in what we're saying and who just feel it's a job to them. This is not a job for the America First movement. We are trying to save our country every single day that we wake up. It is a serious task and serious purpose, and we need to make sure that we have people who are up for that challenge. But, in short, I definitely think there are a lot of black pills out there on the internet, especially. It's easy to get discouraged when you see kind of the difficult journey ahead of us of dismantling this Washington swamp, but it can be done. You can look at countries all over the world who have done similar things. The American people have the resolve, the grit. We're going to be able to get it done and to put America first.
Oh, amazing. I'm glad to hear that. I know you're busy and we're up against the clock. Thank you for coming on. Where can I point people if they want to follow you or learn more online? What links can I put down below?
Yeah, please follow me. I'm Kingsley Wilson on basically every social media platform. X is definitely my favorite though, so I would say check me out there. That's where I put out the most of my content. And then my organization's website is americarenewing.com. We put out a lot of great policy papers and keep people up to date on what we're doing here in DC.
Okay, I will put those both down below. Kingsley, thank you so much. Keep up the good work. I appreciate you coming on. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.